American Resilience During the Revolutionary War, presented by Jacob Segal. About 1.1 out of 2.5 million Americans, or 45% of the entire American population, at some point around the year 1776, was displeased with British rule, according to Rachel Goldstein of the University of Rochester. 400,000 of these patriots fought directly in the Continental Army. The will of the people, or their resilience, was the driving force that defeated the world's greatest military superpower. The harsh adversity that the American people endured was conquered with unity and patriotism. I was inspired by the stimulus packet to research the Revolutionary War because the theme of overcoming adversity and growing from it was directly incorporated in the American people's ideology. The fictional story of Jerry in Through the Tunnel, the historic stories of Lewis Cobell and Simone Biles, and the research paper on PTSD were all connected in that they showed adversity was not the end, that you could recover and fight on. This was the culture of the American people during the American Revolutionary War. My thesis question is, to what extent did the resilience of the American people impact the outcome of the Revolutionary War? I define resilience through these three main ideas or expressions: hope for a better future, search for national identity, and an enduring injustice and adversity are the main concepts that define American resilience. They all explain why America was able to humiliate a global empire with soldiers who barely knew how to fire a gun. Number one, hope for a better future, a source of motivation for the soldier and the comrade. America needed radical change from the rule of the monarchy. The Library of Congress states that multiple taxation acts were passed on the American people without representation in Parliament. The Sugar Act in 1764, the Currency Act also in 1764, and the Stamp Act in 1765 were passed on American people, but they had no representation in Parliament. This led to the well-known slogan, "No taxation without representation," which echoed throughout the colonies. The anger of the patriots was finally expressed on the night of December 16, 1773. Henry Cowell, political activist in the early 2000s, states the Boston Tea Party was a protest against the taxation acts, costing Britain millions adjusting to inflation. It spread political ideology and made the possibility of revolution more real. Patriots were in objection to the taxation acts, but were upset because they had no representation in Parliament. Independence became increasingly possible. The hope that independence would allow people to govern themselves was a fairly new idea, as the great nations were all monarchies. Democracy inspired both Americans and citizens to join the revolution, turning Britain against itself, much like a Lewis Cobell in A Small Measure of Justice from the Stimulus, where a woman traveled across the nation to fight against the mistreatment of American Indian land reserves. The American patriot that joined the Continental Army would fight for what they believed would lead to a brighter future, an American future. Number two, search for national identity, a nation becoming unique and free. According to Alexander Zeiger, who led a study designed to pinpoint the emergence of American nationalism, a revolution starts with a cultural or some other systemic difference between two groups. In this instance, American culture diverged from Britain in the decades of poor treatment and harsh living conditions. Evidence of the emergence of American nationalism is shown in the design of the first few American flags. According to Michael J. Cusick, in his article, The American Flag, Its History and Customs, the American flag began in 1775 with its iconic 13 red and white stripes, but there was also a Union Jack in the upper left-hand corner. In the next few years, the Union Jack was replaced with a navy blue backdrop and 13 white stars in a circular pattern. This shows that America was striving for uniqueness, to be as far away from Britain as possible. 3, enduring injustice and adversity, overcoming heavy losses at Valley Forge. American soldiers were exposed to the harshest living conditions the New World could offer. The City University of New York, in an article, states, the troops suffered from harsh cold, starvation, and disease. But Washington managed to miraculously hold the army together, and then lead onward to recapture the territory of Philadelphia. In Through the Tunnel by Doris Lessing, Jerry's only goal is to swim completely underwater to reach the other side of an ocean cave. Although he encounters nosebleeds and terrible headaches from holding his breath for 2+ minutes, he endures. This is comparable to the extreme hardship American soldiers encountered with smallpox, starvation, and freezing to death. But they also endured, to later capture a key territory, changing the tide of the war. In conclusion, resilience, defined by these 3 concepts, was the most influential part of the Revolutionary War because of how hope for a better future motivated and inspired American people. National identity was responsible for widespread revolutionary ideology, and enduring injustice and adversity was essential for the Continental Army to survive in American terrain. A takeaway from this presentation is that adversity is not a reason to give up or a point of no return. There is opportunity to grow in the face of challenges, just as America grew in the face of British oppression. Sometimes it can be difficult to endure the hardships and to fight against opposition, but it is worth the risk and the effort because it allows us to move forward. This all shows the importance of resilience in the face of adversity as a clearly identified theme of the stimulus materials. Thank you. And this is my bibliography.
Terrific. Thanks, Jacob. So I got a couple of questions for you, and then we'll wrap this up. So for the first one, can you talk a little bit about the preliminary information that you gathered right at the start of your research, and how did that help to inform your perspective?
The most important pieces of information, which showed up in many different sources, was that the Continental Army was made up of mainly just average civilians who had no prior knowledge of organized warfare. And so this was heavily influential in how they needed to be motivated and inspired with the political aspects of becoming independent from Britain. That built the base for my presentation.
Okay, terrific. And then what additional questions emerged from your research? And are any of these important questions?
The question of what are the other factors that influenced the outcome of the Revolutionary War emerged, as in the Continental Army got much help from France and other nations such as Spain, and also that Britain was already weakened from the French and Indian War, or the 7 Years' War, as it's called, and so that allowed America to gain an advantage against the British, but I still decided that the resilience of the average patriot was the most important factor.
Terrific.